Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Arizona Rural Schools Superintendent Roundtable series of webinars, where we're dedicated to supporting you in your work in your rural schools. My name is Melissa Sadorf, and I am the superintendent of the Stanfield Elementary School District in Pinal County, and I also serve as your president-elect for the ARSA Executive Board. And I want to thank you for joining me for this slightly different roundtable. We are going to be recording and pushing this out to you rather than having a live roundtable, since it is the summertime and many of you hopefully are disengaging from work and taking some time to relax and refresh before the year starts. My guest today is from the PAX Institute, and we are going to be discussing some of the PAX initiatives and work that they're doing here in Arizona, and doing a deep dive into the PAX Good Behavior Game, as well as some grant-funded opportunities available to you as a rural leader. And so with that, I'd like to introduce my guest, Carmen Irving of the PAX Institute. And welcome, Carmen. Thank you for being here with me. And let's get started by having you introduce yourself.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Carmen Irving. I'm the Vice President of PAX Institute and have been giving quite a bit of leadership to our Arizona initiative. And Melissa was gracious enough to have me today so that we could talk to all of our rural leaders about some really unique funding opportunities from now until the end of September around PAX Good Behavior Game. So with that, you want to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. So we are in the right place at the right time. We happen to have two funding opportunities bringing PAX Good Behavior Game statewide for all of our educators, as well as some community programming through our governor's office of faith, youth, faith, and families. So today I'm really going to focus on our school-based programming being provided through Access. Before we get into really talking about what those funding opportunities are, let's talk a little bit about what PAX is. So when we talk about PAX Good Behavior Game, we're talking about proven prevention. PAX Good Behavior Game is actually the single most proven classroom-based universal prevention intervention. There are more than 100 random control trials supporting the long-term evidence of PAX Good Behavior Game. People hear this word PAX and they're not quite sure what we're talking about, so I want to sort of set the stage. PAX is the Latin word for peace. When we talk about PAX in the context of PAX Good Behavior Game, we're really talking about peace, productivity, health, and happiness. In other words, what we want more of for our children, what we want more of for our classrooms. So let's really kind of talk about what we mean around the science here. So when we talk about PAX Good Behavior Game, we're talking about using evidence-based trauma-informed kernels or strategies to teach self-regulation and ultimately positive behavior. We really approach this mindset as teaching behavior as a skill set. So it's just one more thing we're teaching children how to do. Teachers are then implementing these evidence-based strategies within the PAX Good Behavior Game through their typical classroom procedures. So I think one of the things I really want to touch on here today is we're not asking you to learn one more thing. We're not taking a manual off the shelf or doing a curriculum on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. This is just a new way to operationalize those strategies. So it's doing what you already do, but using and leveraging the evidence-based kernels to get it done. When we talk about PAX Good Behavior Game, everything hinges on the nurturing environment. So we're very structured in making sure that we are intentional about creating a nurturing environment for our young people. And the reason we do that is we know it works. So when we create that nurturing environment, we increase academic performance. We also see a huge increase in those behavioral outcomes, and over the long haul, an increase in lifetime outcomes. So we know that when we have young people in PAX classrooms, they grow on to be adults with very positive long-term outcomes. So when we talk about the PAX Good Behavior Game, ultimately what we want to do is increase regulation and pro-social behavior while decreasing problematic behavior and ultimately psychiatric symptoms. When we do this, we see some effects. So one, we know that when we're implementing PAX Good Behavior Game in our classrooms, we gain about an hour of instructional time a day. We also see about a 75% reduction in off-task or problematic behaviors. We see a significant increase in standardized test scores, as well as a significant reduction in teacher stress and burnout. This question always comes up, so I wanted to make sure we addressed it here today. This has been at the forefront of many of our educators' minds in Arizona as I've been kind of doing our roadshow. And that is, how does it tie into some of those other initiatives that are already within our building or within our districts? So PAX Good Behavior Game integrates with and becomes a way to operationalize a lot of those initiatives, including PBIS, MTSS, social emotional learning, and trauma-informed care or trauma-informed classrooms. Again, I want to reiterate, PAX is not something extra we're asking our teachers to do. It's just the way they do what they're already doing. So if we're doing PBIS, we're talking about common language, now we're using those PAX strategies to achieve that initiative. Same with social emotional learning. It just becomes the way we operationalize our social emotional learning. So how does it work? So we use this nurturing environment to create these trauma-informed strategies in the classroom to deliberately teach behavior and self-regulation as a skill set, because we know that that's how we really get at that lasting change. There's sort of 4 cornerstones to this nurturing environment. So we're going to be intentional to increase psychological safety and flexibility. We want to really be intentional to reduce or minimize the toxic influences that come into our classrooms. We want to make sure that we're really paying attention to the good stuff, that we're intentional or deliberate about richly reinforcing pro-social behavior and really putting some boundaries or limits around those problematic behaviors. So what can you expect? Let's kind of talk about what I'm asking you to do. So we're asking teachers to attend a 6-hour initial teacher training, the PAX Good Behavior Game training. All of those trainings are offered virtually. They're going to come and be trained by a PAX's Institute certified trainer, and they're going to leave certified to implement PAX Good Behavior Game. Following that training, they're going to know how to do 10 evidence-based trauma-informed strategies. Many of these are similar strategies that you're likely already using in your classroom, but we're going to teach you how to leverage the behavioral science behind it to maximize effectiveness as well as ensure trauma-informed approach. Once you sort of know how to do these 10 evidence-based strategies, you're going to wrap it all together into the evidence-based PAX Good Behavior Game. At full implementation, an educator is going to be using the PAX Good Behavior Game several times a day. And we want to make sure that we talk about a way to kind of sustain it. So we don't expect that you're going to come to one 6-hour training and retain all of this and be ready to implement. So we make sure that we have access to those ongoing coaches. So whether that's an internal support person who's been further trained in PAX Good Behavior Game, or you're relying on the PAX's Institute for ongoing support, we make sure that you have access to a coach at least twice a month to ask your questions or to ensure that you're, quote, doing it the right way, or I kind of forget how to do that. How does that work? So we make sure that you have access to your coaches. When you come to training, so training through our grant opportunity means that your seat is paid for because you are an educator in Arizona. So Access has picked up the tab on your training seat, so to speak, as well as your materials. So anyone who comes to training through the grant will receive their manual as well as a kit. So your kit is a beautiful canvas bag. It's over my shoulder here, full of all of this, the manipulatives to implement the strategies. So it's going to come with a bundle of popsicle sticks and a harmonica and toodles, pads and rubber stamps, all the things that you'll use in your classroom. Additionally, you have your PAX Up app. So for some of us, we really like our Sharpie markers and our popsicle sticks. Some of us don't want to mess with that stuff. So anything you can use, any of the strategies in the kit can also be operationalized using the PAX Up app. So you'll have access to that. The website is a password protected site for our trained educators that houses more than 300 resources that are fully free reproducibles for you. So for example, some of you may not have readers yet, and so you want to use a Toodle, but you need to doodle a Toodle. The Toodle template sits on the website, and you download that and print those. Some of you may be on the higher end and not necessarily doing Toodles, but want to do a PAX-it note for older youth. Those templates live there. So all your reproducibles are there and free of charge. Lastly, you'll see that icon for the PAX chat. That's that coaching model. So twice a month, PAXis uses its PAX experts, or a PAXpert, if you will, to house an open mic. So we come with some prepared content to kind of remind you about implementation or how the science works, or some tips and tricks in different applications. And then that becomes your opportunity to ask questions. It might sound like, hey, the other day I was using the harmonica and we were headed down to the cafeteria and I blew the harmonica and it didn't work. What do I do? Or wait, what's that PAX Voices thing again? Or what's the difference between the PAX Good Behavior game and Granny's Wacky Prizes? So that becomes just your support element to make sure that you're able to maximize all you were trained in.
Carmen, what are the age ranges in the resources?
So for PAX Good Behavior game, when you come to training, we're really going to focus on kindergarten through 6th grade. On the online resources, we've trained lots of folks on the earlier end and the older end. So we really walk pre-K through high school in online resources. The lion's share of resources are going to be at that target audience of kindergarten through 6th grade, but you're going to see adaptations going much younger and much older.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about what PAX does, because it must mean something when GOYFF and Access get together and say, we're going to fully fund this. We want you to go to this. So there must be some good outcomes. So I'm going to take just a minute to talk about data, but I promise to be quick so no one glazes over. The first is, we know that PAX reduces problematic behavior. So quickly looking at the graph, we know that our most off-task behaviors happen before implementation. Then shortly after PAX training, you go back and you start doing some of those strategies or evidence-based kernels, and you're going to see a decrease in off-task problematic behavior. You're going to do more of those strategies and eventually be at full implementation about 8 to 10 weeks after training, and you'll be playing the PAX Good Behavior game, and that's when you're going to see the fewest problematic behaviors. We also know that PAX improves academic outcomes. So what we're looking at here are standardized test scores. We know that classrooms who implement PAX Good Behavior game score higher in both math and reading than those classrooms without PAX Good Behavior game.
And that makes sense when you're talking about an hour more of instruction a day that you're able to implement with those students.
You hit the nail on the head, and people want to know where that hour comes from, because the biggest barrier, the biggest pushback is, I don't have time for one more thing. So I want to remind you, we're not pulling a curriculum off the shelf. What we're doing is we're putting into play those evidence-based strategies. It's how we set up our classroom. It's how we operationalize the day-to-day. Where we gain that hour is that we're not losing the time in transition. So all of a sudden our kids are becoming far more efficient. When we have fewer problematic behaviors to manage, suddenly we have a lot more time to cover instruction.
Makes sense.
This is one of my favorites. So this isn't just for the kids, this is also for the adults. So we know that PAX Good Behavior game improves teacher well-being. What we're really getting at here are reductions in teacher stress and teacher burnout. Lastly, I kind of started here, and that was to say that PAX Good Behavior game improves lifetime outcomes. So in the short term, what we're going to see is an increase in on-task behavior, a decrease in problematic behaviors. We're going to see a reduction in office referrals. We're going to see some increases in academics, particularly around standardized tests. Even in teacher, reductions in teacher stress or teacher burnout. All wonderful things, all short-term outcomes. Where the funders get interested at the federal level and the state level in really funding a statewide initiative like this is around those long-term outcomes. So what we know is that when children are in PAX classrooms in elementary school, they go on to have very different outcomes as young adults than their counterpart peers who are not in PAX classrooms. So some of those are around those protective factors, like children who are in PAX classrooms in elementary school are more likely to attend college. They're more likely to graduate high school than their counterpart peers who are not. But it also goes in reverse. It becomes protective against those risk factors. We know that youth who are in PAX classrooms in elementary school are less likely to need special education services. We also know things like they're less likely to have drug misuse, alcohol misuse, have their own mental health diagnosis. They're less likely to be involved in a violent crime. They're less likely for tobacco use. So we've been tracking from the Hopkins study now for more than 30 years, watching what happens to young people as they enter adulthood with PAX as that intervention. Again, that's where that rich data comes from and what really funded this initiative. So let's talk logistics. So all of our PAX trainings are available virtually. At this point, post-pandemic, we're still only working virtually, which means that for you to participate in PAX Good Behavior Game, you can do so from the comfort of your own home, yoga pants permitted. Everything is fully funded currently through the end of September. So September 29th is our last training date for this initiative. And what that means as we walk through it is that your seat is paid for that PAX Good Behavior Game initial training, along with all of the materials. So you'll simply register for training, you'll be given your link, and then your kit will be shipped to your school and you'll pick it up, you'll have your manual and all of your materials and you'll be ready to go. Some of you are going to go through it and go, holy cow, I want more, I need more of that. Some of you will want to be at PAXpert level or may serve a role in your school or district to do some of that coaching. There are 2 of those coaching trainings available. So you can go through partner training or client success coaching, fully funded, same deal. We've been very fortunate because of the just unique situation we're in post-pandemic. We've been very fortunate to be able to offer a non-contract differential to any educator who participates during non-contract time. So if you go through training during the summer or after school hours or on a Saturday, you also not only get your seat and your kit paid for, but you're given a $100 Amazon gift card after completion of training. We just want to really make sure that we're good stewards of the grant and are able to share this with anyone across the state. And so Access has made funding available to incentivize with a non-contract differential. Let's talk just a little anecdotally about what's going on and share a lot of data. Of course, that's really interesting to a lot of funders. They want to know, does this stuff really work? But I think for educators, people want to know what are other educators saying. So these are direct quotes that actually came from Arizona. These are other Arizona teachers talking. And so I'll just read a couple of those. Since we started doing PAX, students at all grade levels are taking ownership for their own actions, both academically and socially. I cannot begin to describe how much more confident PAX has made me in my abilities to handle behavior in the classroom. PAX improves student behaviors, helps them to focus on their tasks, and teaches them teamwork, cooperation, and self-respect. PAX GBG gives teachers the results we want from our students while giving students the fun they desire. And lastly, after learning PAX, I feel more comfortable in how to manage a classroom and more prepared as a teacher. So again, go ahead, Melissa.
No, I was going to say, first year or beginning teachers, this would have been for me as a teacher starting out, this would have been a very great way to kind of dial in my classroom management protocols.
Absolutely.
So, really knowing that we have a lot of teachers right now that are on alternate certifications for a variety of reasons and situations. This is something as far as training in helping them really get comfortable with classroom management, which is at the foundation of making sure that you have a well-run classroom that can then lead to those academic outcomes that we all want.
Couldn't have said it better. That's exactly where we're headed with this. The last slide I'll stick up there is simply the website. So if we go to paxis.org/PAX Arizona, you're going to land on a training website. So it's as simple as follow the link to register for an at-large training. All of those trainings will give you that registration sheet, and you simply select your date, and you can do that from the comfort of your home. All of those trainings are live, so it's important to be there on time and be there for the day. You'll have a live trainer and you'll be in a group of about 20 participants. One of the other opportunities if you're in a position that you're thinking, you know what, I don't want this just for me, I want this for my grade band or for my district or for my school, we still have some opportunities to do what we call a site-specific training. So rather than just going and being a participant in a group at large, we can schedule a site-specific. So I'll use Jellyfish Elementary as my example. If Jellyfish Elementary principal is seeing this and saying, I need this, then it's as simple as reaching out to me, and I will work with our contracts team to identify your date and have a fully funded training particular to your building.
And that needs to happen before September 29th. Is that correct?
That's correct. And as you can imagine, lots of folks are hearing this message. So time is of the essence. We want to make sure that we're able to honor requests that come in. Melissa, are there other questions that we should talk about here today?
The one thing that really comes to mind for me is challenges that leaders and teachers might face as they're implementing. Can you speak to those challenges that they might encounter?
Absolutely. I think the biggest challenge or barrier is on the front end, that going to educators in the middle of summer and saying, hey, we've got this great training opportunity for you. It is the barrier. Educators aren't necessarily in a spot that they're feeling like they want to take on one more thing. So I think the first one is to remind everyone, we're not asking you to do one more thing. It's really how do we construct our day to use the science to do what we already do. Once we get to training, we don't expect anyone to come to one 6-hour training and have it. And so we've been very intentional to make sure that we have a solid ongoing coaching model, so that as people get going and have questions or run into a roadblock or don't remember or really thought they had it and it didn't work over here, that folks have access to not information. It's not a frequently asked questions. It really is a live person with lots of experience in the science as well as implementation to answer those questions.
And the nice thing too is that it's all virtual. So
everything is virtual. That's right.
Yeah, which has been in the past a stumbling block for rural districts and teachers to participate in a lot of those professional development opportunities. So I appreciate that challenge has been mitigated right out of the gate.
We've worked very hard. We've been very fortunate with our funders to put in as much flexibility as possible. Our ultimate goal is to get PAX Good Behavior Game in as many classrooms as possible, to get as many educators trained as possible. And so on the front end, we've been able to eliminate a lot of barriers. And so that's in many parts some of the silver lining that came with pandemic. As many challenges as we're faced, we've learned how to do this work really well virtually.
Yep, I agree with that. If anybody wants more information than what we're providing right now, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, I was just going to say I'll put in my chat, but that doesn't work here. So we have the PAX Arizona website. The other way to reach me is directly through email, which is carmen@paxis.org, which is PAXIS. I'm sorry, Carmen, CARMEN @paxis, PAXIS.org. And Melissa, maybe when you send this information out, you can put my email in the email. So just a reminder here that it's in the email.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will stop sharing this.
All right. And for those of you that are listening, we will be absolutely able to help you get in contact with Carmen. You can always email me and I'll put you in touch with her, especially if you want to schedule one of those site-specific trainings. You do have a short turnaround time to decide to do that. So make sure that you're reaching out quickly so that you can get on their calendar. So Carmen, anything that we haven't covered that you want to make sure we're ending with?
I think we did it. I think we covered it all, but thank you so much for tuning in. For those people who are still listening, I hope you're emailing me because you were really interested if you hung in all the way to the end.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today for this roundtable, and it's great information. I hope we have a lot of rural takers on the offer of free training, and it's a very good program. So I hope people are taking advantage of it. For you, ARSA members, this recording will be available on our YouTube website. So please make sure if you want to share it out with the people in your organization that you feel free to share that link. And thanks again for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of your summer and the start of a brand new school year coming up very quickly. Have a great day.